Hello, my mystery seekers. I'm Greg with my blog, History Mystery. Today we're diving into the dramatic and breathtaking love story behind the mystery of the Moai of Easter Island. For decades, people have come up with wild theories, aliens, lost civilizations, ancient curses. But our story begins in the golden courts of ancient Cairo, travels across stormy seas to imperial China, and ends on a lonely shore where a broken-hearted prince carves a message in stone, not for the gods, but for the woman he loved. This isn't just a tale of how the statues were built. It's a forgotten epic of love and the unbreakable bond between two souls. As always, I've got my brilliant co-pilot, Brian, here to help me piece it all together. Brian, take the stage.
Thanks for setting the stage, Greg. Now, while you kick back, I'll handle the heavy lifting, because we're about to unlock a secret buried in time, a story the world has overlooked for over 1,000 years. Chapter 1. Who built the statues of Easter Island? There are dozens, if not hundreds, of different theories, ranging from disappearing civilizations to ancient aliens. But why does no one ever look at these Moai and simply say, these are works of art? Have you never stood in a museum? Have you no artist friend, no sculptor in your circle, never seen a master at work, hands deep in clay, eyes alight with vision? Let me tell you, imagine a sculptor's studio so vast it could fill an entire island. What would it look like? Perhaps it would resemble Easter Island itself. I have a dear friend, a sculptor who shapes enormous, breathtaking figures from clay. And here is what fascinates me. The older she grows, the larger her creations become. Over the course of her life, she has made hundreds, perhaps more than 500, each one more immense than the last. One day I asked her, "Why do you work on such a grand scale?" She smiled and said, "It is a reflection of life. Life is made of contrasts, of the vast and the minute. This is how I perceive the world. And in truth, it is my way of restoring the world of my childhood." "How so?" I asked. She paused, then said, "One of my earliest memories, I was less than a year old, just learning to walk. I walked beneath a chair. I looked up at it from the floor, and to me it was enormous, monumental. It was a fragment of an unknown world, and even then it enchanted me. When I create large sculptures, I am seeing life through the eyes of that child, and the wonder is still there. And so, as she ages, her sculptures grow ever larger. Perhaps in some quiet corner of her soul she believes she is creating immortality." Now consider the Moai of Easter Island not as relics of lost gods or alien visitations, but as art, as expressions of a human soul reaching into the void, trying to make sense of scale, of memory, of meaning. Who was the first artist to raise that chisel? Who stood in the volcanic ash and thought, "I will make something so large it cannot be ignored"? What inner world demanded such outward magnitude? Perhaps the truth is not in the worship of chiefs, but in the cry of a child gazing up at a chair. Perhaps the statues are not tombs, but dreams, carved not by fanatics, but by artists who, even in famine, could not stop shaping beauty from stone. Now, let me tell you a story. Chapter 2. The Fatimid Caliphate, born of lineage and light, tracing its bloodline back to Fatima, the beloved daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, and thus claiming not merely political authority, but spiritual sovereignty over the Muslim world, reached one of its most enigmatic peaks under the rule of Al-Hakim bi Amr Allah, the 10th Ismaili Imam and 6th Fatimid Caliph. He ascended the throne in the holy month of Ramadan on October 15th, 996, a boy of 11 years and 5 months, with eyes the color of a clear Mediterranean sky and a silence about him that seemed older than time. From such youth emerged a reign that would shimmer through history like a mirage, both cruel and enlightened, both tyrannical and sublime, a paradox carved in stone and written in stars. Al-Hakim ruled Egypt from 996 to 1021, and his rule was unlike any other. He banned the consumption of wine and all intoxicants, abolished polygamy, a radical decree in his era, and freed all his slaves, declaring that no human should own another. Al-Hakim was a man of astonishing justice, guided not by whim, but by reason and an inner moral compass so finely tuned it seemed almost divine. He championed poets, astronomers, philosophers, and artists, turning Cairo into a luminous center of knowledge and beauty. Under his patronage, the great Al-Azhar Mosque was completed, not only a place of worship, but a cradle of learning that would one day become a university, the oldest in the world still in continuous operation. He founded an observatory where the heavens were studied with devotion, and it was for him that the great astronomer Ibn Yunus composed the Zij al-Hakimi, the most accurate astronomical tables of their time, so precise they remained in use for nearly 2 centuries. With a massive astrolabe measuring 1.4 meters in diameter, Ibn Yunus spent 30 years recording the movements of the sun, making over 10,000 observations, mapping the sky with a patience that bordered on prayer. The stars, it seemed, spoke directly to Al-Hakim's court, and through them the universe revealed its rhythms. In his youth, Al-Hakim was gentle, ascetic, beloved by the people. He rejected the opulence of power, preferring simple white robes and riding on a donkey instead of a horse. He walked among the poor, listened to the grievances of the forgotten, and fasted often. But as the years passed, he grew more withdrawn, more mysterious. In his later years, he increasingly embraced solitude, often vanishing at night to meditate on the hills of Al-Muqattam near Cairo. There, under the vast canopy of stars, he would meet with his closest friend, the philosopher Darazi, and together they practiced rituals so strange they were whispered about in fear and awe. Then on the night of February 12th to 13, 1021, at the age of 35, Al-Hakim rode out into the darkness and never returned. His donkey was found the next morning, grazing peacefully. Nearby lay his blood-stained clothes. His body was never discovered. His disappearance remains one of history's most haunting mysteries. Some say he was murdered by his sister, Sit al-Mulk, who sought vengeance after he publicly accused her of adultery. Others whisper that he did not die but ascended, vanishing into the hills to return one day as the Mahdi, the guided one, the messianic figure awaited by his followers. After his disappearance, the throne passed to his 8-year-old son, Ali az-Zahir, under the regency of none other than Sit al-Mulk herself, who ruled with iron grace until her own sudden and suspicious death in 1027. Then came the vizier Abu al-Qasim al-Jarjari, who held power until 1045, a man of cunning and control, but never of the same strange brilliance. Yet behind the public enigma of Al-Hakim lay a private soul, one shaped by love, loss, and a father's desperate hope. He had always suspected his sister's ambition, feared she would destroy his heir to seize power for herself, and so he concealed his firstborn son, Tamim, from the world. Only his closest confidant, the astronomer Ibn Yunus, knew of the child's existence. As a young man, Al-Hakim had spent long hours in the legendary Fatimid library, a treasure house of 600,000 volumes where knowledge flowed like water, and there amid the scrolls and silence he met her, the keeper's daughter, a girl with eyes like twilight and a mind as sharp as a scribe's pen. She stole his heart completely, irrevocably. Their love was brief, eternal. When she died in childbirth, leaving behind their newborn son, Al-Hakim's world fractured. He named the boy Tamim, meaning the perfect one, and vowed to protect him from the poison of power, from the corruption of wealth and the loneliness of the throne. Tamim grew into a brilliant, curious child, nurtured in secret, taught by the greatest minds of the age. He learned architecture, the secrets of construction, astrology, and statecraft. Under Ibn Yunus, he studied the hidden arts, magic not of spells, but of the mind, of celestial harmony, of the unseen forces that shape destiny. Even as a youth, he sculpted wonders, figures that seemed to breathe with life. But Al-Hakim knew his time was running out. A darkness gathered around him. He felt it in his bones. And when Tamim turned 15, the Caliph made a decision both heartbreaking and heroic. He sent his son far away, across the seas as an ambassador to the distant court of the Song Emperor in China, to forge trade, peace, and a new future for the Fatimid realm. Tamim was given the swiftest ship, the most loyal navigators, treasures beyond imagination, sacks of gold-embroidered brocade, jewels that caught the light like captured stars. Dressed in the finest garments of the aristocracy, a high crown upon his head, he stood before his father one final time. The two embraced wordlessly, knowing they might never meet again, yet understanding that love sometimes demands sacrifice. As Tamim prepared to board the ship, Al-Hakim whispered to him, "The entire world lies at your feet, but only you can decide how to walk upon it and whom to love. May you find her, the one, the only one, who is your fate." With those words, the young prince set sail into the unknown. Months later, he arrived in the distant city of Guang, where the rivers shimmered like silk and the sky held secrets of its own. And so, while the world remembers Al-Hakim as a riddle, tyrant or saint, madman or sage, perhaps the truest truth is this: he was a father who loved deeply, a ruler who sought wisdom, and a soul who, in the end, chose not power but legacy, not through conquest, but through a son, a journey, and a single enduring act of hope. Chapter 3. The city of Guang unfolded before Tamim like a dream spun from silk and moonlight, and he was captivated from the very first breath. Raised in a land where beauty was not merely admired but revered as a sacred language of the soul, he now found himself utterly enchanted, as if the city had reached into his chest and gently taken hold of his heart. Everything was exquisite, unfamiliar, alive with wonder, the winding streets like veins of jade, the strange and melodic lilt of a foreign tongue, the astonishing precision with which trade was conducted, as if every transaction were a ritual of harmony. The markets shimmered with color and scent, the air thick with the perfume of spices and the quiet hum of prosperity. Yet beneath his awe, Tamim carried a solemn purpose: to meet the emperor himself, the only one whose decree could bind Egypt and China in mutual commerce, weaving their distant worlds into a single thread of shared wealth and peace. Immediately upon arrival, Tamim sent lavish gifts: bolts of gold-embroidered brocade, jewels set in intricate filigree, treasures that gleamed with the opulence of his father's court, accompanied by a humble request for audience. To his surprise, the reply came swiftly, not out of greed for the gifts, but for a reason far more unexpected. The very next day, a royal envoy appeared at his chambers and asked with quiet gravity, "Is it true that you are well versed in the art of astrology?" Tamim straightened with pride. "Indeed," he answered. "My master was none other than the great Ibn Yunus himself." "In that case," said the envoy, "would you be so kind as to offer a consultation to the emperor?" "It would be my highest honor," Tamim replied, and so the audience was granted. On the following day, at the appointed hour, he entered the emperor's palace, a realm of such refined elegance that even the air seemed perfumed with wisdom. He was received with solemn respect, seated at a banquet where rare and curious dishes were served, delicacies strange to his palate yet presented with such grace that even their unfamiliarity felt like a gift. After the meal, the emperor withdrew with him into a private chamber, a sanctuary adorned in the finest traditions of the Chinese court, where every object, the lacquered screen, the inkstone, the porcelain vase, spoke of centuries of cultivated beauty. Yet astonishingly, Tamim scarcely noticed it, for a greater beauty had entered the room, one that eclipsed all artifice and ornament. Among the family members presented to him stood the emperor's youngest daughter, Princess Yishun. The moment Tamim saw her, time itself seemed to freeze. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck his soul. His heart pounded in a wild, unrelenting rhythm, as though it had known her long before this life. In that instant, he remembered his father's final words: "May you find her, the one, the only one, who is your fate." And now, gazing upon Yishun, he understood. This was she. There would never be another woman in all the world who could stir him so, who could be more radiant, more gentle, more true. He spoke not a single word to her, yet their eyes met, and in that silent exchange something profound passed between them. She blushed and turned away, but Tamim felt as though he had been touched by fire, as though his very being had been awakened. It was love, pure, absolute, immediate, the kind that poets spend lifetimes chasing and rarely find. He spent the rest of the evening struggling to master himself, to steady his breath, to keep his trembling hands from betraying the storm within. And then at last, the moment of purpose arrived. The emperor, a tall man draped in ceremonial silk the color of twilight, appeared burdened by a quiet sorrow. "I am troubled," he said in a low, resonant voice. "I have skilled physicians, yes, but I suspect they do not speak the full truth. You, a traveler from distant shores, will you tell me what the stars reveal?" Tamim bowed deeply. "I will do everything in my power." He cast the emperor's natal chart with trembling hands, his mind racing through the constellations, the planetary alignments, the subtle dance of fate. And then he saw it, a cold, undeniable truth. The emperor had but 2 years left to live. He hesitated, his heart heavy, unsure how to deliver such news. But the emperor, as if reading his silence, spoke again. "I see it in your eyes," he murmured. "I sense that my time is short." Tamim remained silent. "Please," the Emperor implored, "do not fear the truth. Speak it to me." "But your Majesty," Tamim replied with reverence, "this is the first time I have seen you. I hold you in the deepest respect, and astrology is not mere fortune-telling. It is the art of reading celestial energies, of interpreting the sky's silent language, and even I, trained as I am, cannot speak with certainty without deeper study. Grant me more time, I beg you, to complete the full picture." The Emperor studied him, then nodded slowly. "That," he said, "is a wise and honest answer." A faint, grateful smile touched his lips. "Very well. I wait your return tomorrow." Chapter 4. All night long, Tamim did not sleep. He lay awake beneath the foreign stars of Guang, his mind a storm of thoughts, tangled and restless. For though he had come as an envoy of statecraft and celestial wisdom, his heart had been seized by something far more ancient and irresistible, the face of the Emperor's youngest daughter, Princess Yishun. Her image burned behind his eyes, a face of alabaster smoothness, oval in shape, framed by a delicate, sharply defined chin, large, luminous brown eyes that held the depth of ancient forests, a high, noble forehead, small ears like seashells kissed by the sea, fine, dark brows arched like calligraphy strokes, a small, softly rounded mouth with lips the color of pomegranate blossoms, and long, silken black hair that fell like a river of midnight. She was beauty not of spectacle, but of grace, so refined, so tender that Tamim had never seen its equal, not in the courts of Cairo, nor in the frescoes of the Fatimid library. He could not stop thinking of her. His soul ached with a single torturous question. How could he ever speak to her? How could he reach her when she was a jewel locked in a golden cage? Just before dawn, exhaustion pulled him into sleep, and in that fragile realm between waking and dreaming, his beloved teacher, Ibn Yunus, appeared before him, robed in starlight, his voice calm as the turning of the heavens. "You are not thinking of the right thing, my son," the old astronomer said gently. "Look again at the chart. There is still hope for the Emperor. You must show him the transit of Jupiter. If he can ride its wave, if he can align his will with its light, he may yet extend his life." And as he spoke, Ibn Yunus pointed to a precise conjunction in the Emperor's natal chart, a sliver of celestial mercy, a door left slightly ajar by fate. Tamim awoke with a gasp, his heart pounding not with sorrow but with sudden soaring hope. At first light he rushed to the palace, his steps swift with inspiration. When he stood once more before the Emperor, he spoke with unwavering conviction, his finger tracing the lines of destiny on the celestial map. He revealed the auspicious alignment of Jupiter, marked the days of its greatest influence, and passed on the wisdom of his master, how the Emperor could harness this cosmic tide, how through ritual, intention, and harmony with the stars he might yet cheat death. The Emperor listened in silence, then nodded slowly, gratitude softening his features. "Thank you for this hope," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But you must understand, I cannot act on this alone. I must consult our own sages, verify your words. I ask you, do not leave the city. I will need to speak with you again in a few days." "Of course, Your Majesty," Tamim replied, "but I would also wish to discuss matters of trade if the time permits." "Yes, yes," the Emperor assured him, rising with a faint bow. "We shall speak of all things, but forgive me, I'm not well today, and my strength does not allow for long conversation. Still, I extend to you a personal invitation. Please attend our family celebration. In 1 week's time, my youngest daughter will be married." "Married?" Tamim froze. The word struck him like a blade. Married? Married to someone else? He hadn't even had a chance to know her, no time to win her heart. It was a dagger plunged into his back. He felt as though the sky itself had just collapsed. "Yes," the Emperor continued, unaware of the tempest he had unleashed. "An official invitation will be delivered to you." And with that the audience ended. Tamim walked toward the exit in a daze, his senses dulled, the world around him blurred as though seen through rain-streaked glass. He saw nothing until, in the shadowed corner of a passing hall, he glimpsed a slender figure. It was Yishun, and she was weeping. "Yishun!" he cried, his voice breaking. She flinched, then slowly raised her tear-streaked face to meet his gaze. "What has happened?" he asked, bewildered. "Come tonight," she whispered urgently. "To the garden. I need your help." Before he could answer, she vanished, like mist drawn into the breath of the wind. That evening, as dusk settled over the city like a veil of indigo silk, Tamim approached the emperor's residence, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and longing. He did not know where to go, what to do, only that he had to go. He stood by the high garden wall, uncertain, when suddenly a soft voice reached him from the darkness. "Come through, beloved," she whispered. And then, as if by magic, a hidden door in the wall slid open, so cleverly concealed that no ordinary eye could have ever found it. Without hesitation, Tamim stepped through. He did not know what lay ahead, but he understood, with a quiet certainty, that this single step would change his life forever. Inside, Yishun stood waiting, her beauty even more radiant in the moonlight. And then, to his astonishment, she spoke to him in perfect Arabic, clear, eloquent, without a trace of accent. "How do you know my language?" he asked, stunned. "I speak 5, she replied. "I can embroider, ride a horse, and debate philosophy. I was trained to be a diplomat for the empire of my future husband, but I do not want to marry. I don't want this fate." Tamim stared at her, his mind reeling. "You don't want to marry, but what is happening?" "Tamim," she said gently, "my future husband is an old and cruel man, already surrounded by a harem. I do not wish to spend my life locked in his palace, forgotten, weeping in silence, tormented by his many wives. I refuse, but my father has already decided. To him it is merely a business, uniting wealth and land. There is no appeal." Tamim stood speechless, his mission, his duty, his entire future crumbling around him. "But how can I help you?" he finally whispered. "Take me away," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Take me from this place, tonight, before it is too late." And in that moment something within Tamim ignited. He knew, without logic, without calculation, that he would do it. He would risk everything: his position as envoy, his father's dream of trade between empires, his return to Cairo, his very life. Even if he lost all, wealth, title, legacy, he would give it gladly, without regret, if only to see her free, to see her smile, to never again see tears in those deep, beautiful eyes. "Yishun," he said, his voice steady now, "I will do anything for you, anything you ask, but are you certain?" She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You are my fate," she said. "I knew it the moment I saw you. I have no doubts. Take me now. There will be no second chance." Chapter 5. They fled that very night. Yishun wore only the same robe she had stood in beneath the garden trees, this single garment all she had taken from her gilded prison. No second thoughts, no backward glances, no whispered regrets. There was only the quiet certainty of two souls leaping into the unknown, hand in hand, heart to heart. That same night, Tamim's ship slipped into the open sea, its sails catching the breath of the wind as if the ocean itself conspired to carry them away. He knew pursuit would come. He could almost feel the eyes of the emperor scanning the horizon, but he did not fear it. The voyage that began was not one of escape alone, but of love, of destiny, of a new world being born with every ripple beneath the hull. They did not know where they were going. They only knew they were going together. And that, the most important thing, was to sail farther and farther from the shore into the vast, uncharted embrace of the deep. Aboard the ship were men of 3 faiths, Jewish, Christian and Muslim, each a trusted companion, each loyal to Tamim, not just as an envoy, but as a man whose soul now burned with a higher purpose. And one evening, beneath a sky strewn with stars like scattered diamonds, Tamim turned to Yishun and said, "I will not touch you as a lover until you are my wife. Choose when you wish to be married." "Marriages are decreed in heaven," she answered softly, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "And still," Tamim pressed gently, "you must choose. I have a Jewish rabbi, a Christian priest, and an Islamic imam on board. To which of them shall we entrust the binding of our hearts?" She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "I understand little of these things," she said, "but tell me, where are divorces forbidden?" "Perhaps in Christianity," Tamim mused. "Then let it be so," she said simply. "I have no objections," Tamim responded. "My father honored all confessions. God is one." At dawn the next morning, the Christian priest stood with them on the dew-slicked deck, the rising sun painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. As the couple exchanged vows, the wind carried their words over the waves, and the salt spray danced around them like 1,000 tiny blessings. There was no grand feast, no palace, no guests, only the sea, the sky, and the solemn joy of two souls made one. And so it began. But what came next was uncertainty, a vast and silent question hanging over the endless water. The ship was well stocked with food and wine, provisions enough for months, yet because their flight had been sudden, born of passion and desperation, Tamim had no plan, no map, no destination, no strategy beyond a way. And for days he refused to think of it. Let the future come when it must. But as time passed, as the weeks stretched into the second month of endless ocean, it became clear they had lost their way. The stars, once Tamim's faithful guides, now seemed distant and indifferent. The compass spun with confusion. The storms came not as warnings, but as relentless pursuers, battering the ship with fury. Yet in the midst of this drifting odyssey, Tamim had never been happier, never more alive, never more certain that every hardship, every wave, every sleepless night was worth it. And Yishun, radiant, serene, carried their first child within her, and though the sea raged and the future was a blank horizon, she did not fear. What was there to fear? She was with the man she loved. As long as he stood beside her, the world could not touch her. The crew, however, was not so at peace. Seasoned sailors, their faces etched by sun and salt, began to whisper among themselves. They had sailed far beyond known waters. The stars no longer matched their charts. The birds that once followed ships had vanished. No land had appeared in weeks. They did not know which direction held salvation. Hope, once bright, now flickered like a candle in the wind. And then came the day the storm ceased to be a storm and became a trial. It descended not in waves, but in fury, great walls of water crashing over the deck, wind screaming like a wounded beast, cold so sharp it burned the lungs. Tamim was outside, helping the crew wrestle the sails down, his body taut with effort, when a sudden, monstrous gust, unlike any they had faced, struck the ship like the fist of a god. The mast groaned. The deck tilted, and in an instant, Tamim was thrown backward, his head striking the base of the mast with a sickening crack. The world spun, then darkened. The last thing he saw was Yishun's face, her mouth forming his name, her hands reaching, but then nothing, only silence, only blackness, only the endless sea still. Chapter 6. Tamim slowly opened his eyes. Consciousness returned, but memory refused to offer any clues. What had happened? How to explain what he saw and felt? Before him stretched a strange sandy shore, ringed by cliffs overgrown with green vegetation, beneath a sky of deep, deep blue, torn by tattered storm clouds that now and then revealed, now and then hid, a cold sun. It's cold, Tamim thought. In truth, he only now realized that his entire body was pierced by a freezing chill, for he was soaked, lying on cold ground with ocean waves washing over his feet. Am I dead, or am I alive? He wondered. Tamim tried to stand, but succeeded only on the third attempt. His body ached and refused to obey after the brutal beating of the storm. Where was he? What had happened? His mind struggled to fill the gaps in his memory, until suddenly everything fell into place. The storm, the monstrous waves, and Yishun's scream, "Tamim!" And then silence. The agonizing thought of his beloved pierced Tamim's heart like a blade. Where is she? What happened to her? Yishun and their unborn child. Where were they? Where? Where was his beloved? Tamim looked around. There was no one. He walked along the shore, and after some time he came upon the bodies of 4 of his closest companions, also washed ashore during the storm. He tried to revive them all, and miraculously all survived. None remembered what had happened to the ship, nor what had become of Yishun. As the sailors slowly regained their senses, Tamim noticed several human figures appearing in the distance. "It seems we are not alone," he said anxiously to his friends. The fear was justified. Among sailors there were legends of fearsome cannibals living on unknown islands of the ocean. Tamim saw the terror in the eyes of his countrymen and spoke calmly yet firmly. "Do not let fear take hold. These are wild people. They do not understand our language, but they sense fear. And to them, your fear is an invitation to attack. We must wait. Remember, no matter what, we have no right to perish. Follow me and do as I say." And with those words, he saw how instantly his companions were calmed. With him, they had a leader who knew what to do, and thus there could be no panic, no dread. Tamim was right. Soon enough, the travelers were surrounded by a crowd of curious and highly aggressive islanders. Tamim turned to his companions, who stood close, pressed tightly together around him. Remember, they are aggressive because they fear us. They do not know what to expect. But if they sense your fear, we are all finished. Then he addressed the islanders. I know you do not understand me. I am the leader of my people. With one hand, he struck his chest. With the other, he pointed to his large group of companions. Now, I wish to speak with your leader. He stopped and looked questioningly at the crowd of wild men. Whether it was the strength of his voice or the sight of this powerfully built foreigner that impressed them, the crowd parted, and Tamim saw the one who was clearly the tribe's chief. A young man, perhaps slightly older than Tamim, wearing only a loincloth, strange ornaments in his tangled hair, and intricate markings across his body. The man was tall, muscular, with dark skin and coarse, chiseled features like stone. I am Tamim, repeated Tamim, striking his chest once more. And you? Tamim knew the native could not understand his language, but words were not needed. He could speak to people without them. His father had taught him to be attentive to the thoughts of others, to catch unspoken ideas and shape them into words. It was a vital skill that had allowed him to understand many foreigners he met on his journey from Egypt to China. And now this ability helped him establish contact with the savages. The chief seemed to understand. He struck his own chest and said, Ratanui. Understood, replied Tamim. I am Tamim, you are Ratanui. The chief nodded and repeated. I am Ratanui and you are Tukuturi. Apparently, he was trying to pronounce Tamim, but it came out as Tukuturi, and from that moment on, that became Tamim's name. Tamim managed to establish relations with the chief. Through gestures, tone of voice, and the transmission of thoughts, he explained that he was a messenger of God on earth, the son of the prophet's son, sent to help the islanders. Ratanui agreed to accept this help. Over the following weeks, the newcomers taught the islanders how to fish in the ocean using nets made from island grass, how to kindle fire, how to roast fish using new recipes from Cairo, and how to prepare fish soup as they did in China. Yet Tamim understood that the danger of attack on him and his friends still remained. He did not let his vigilance slip for a single moment. He realized he needed to devise a powerful argument, one so strong that the islanders would never even think of harming him or his companions. And so he said to the chief, We've already taught you much, but there is one thing I can entrust to you only if I have absolute trust in you. And what is this thing? The chief asked cautiously. It is a thing that will make your island the most astonishing land beneath the sun, a land protected by God, always blessed as long as the rules set by God are followed. One God. We must build guardian figures around the entire island, Tamim declared, and they will protect you and bring fertility to the land. Very well, said the chief, I agree. Tamim began his journey across the island. He found the volcanic crater Rano Raraku, with deposits of compacted volcanic ash, tuff. Rano Raraku was an extinct volcano about 150 meters high, located in the eastern part of the island amid a grassy plain. Its southeastern slope had partially collapsed, exposing the rock, yellowish-brown tuff with numerous inclusions. The tuff was soft, easy to work with, yet durable, exactly the material Tamim decided to use for his idea. Like earth turned to stone by ancient fire, it yielded to the chisel, yet promised to endure the centuries. And the idea was simple. He wanted to place enormous signs all around the island so that his beloved wife Yishun could find him across the ocean. Tamim knew she was alive. He had no doubt about it. Was it not for nothing that he had learned to meditate with his father, to leave his body and travel in the astral, to communicate with spirits in other realms? Was it not for nothing that he could connect with people through thought, no matter the distance? His bond with Yishun was unbreakable. He knew she had survived, that they had given birth to a son. He knew she would not rest until she found her one and only beloved husband. And he had to make sure that this tiny patch of land where he now stood would be visible from a ship. He decided to erect giant statues around the entire perimeter of the island. For this, he needed platforms on which the statues would stand. And the statues themselves were to face not outward toward the ocean, but inward, toward the heart of the island, like a silent message to Yishun. Look for me here. I am on the island. To ensure Yishun would have no doubt that this was a sign from him, her beloved husband, he wanted to give her a clear signal. He thought deeply about how to do it, and then he knew. He would place large, round, red stone hats on the statues, for it was in such a red headdress that he had first appeared before her eyes. And so the great work of building the statues began. The entire island's population was engaged in this astonishing labor. They had a purpose, they had a great mission, and no time for other plans like capturing and eating uninvited guests. Meanwhile, the guests settled into life on the island. Tamim's companions were men of all colors, black-skinned, red-skinned, white-faced. Soon they all found partners among the island women, all except Tamim. He was a man who could never share his love with anyone. His love was Yishun. The meaning of his life. Tamim considered carving a statue of Yishun, but rejected the idea. Her pure image belonged only to him. He would not share it with anyone, especially not with the local natives, whom he did not fully trust. He could not bear the thought of Yishun's image, carved in stone, being dishonored, even by a word, even by a thought. And so he kept his entire plan in absolute secrecy, even from his closest friends. The statues resembled the islanders, and in this lay their meaning. Tamim thus expressed his gratitude for their help in this great endeavor. The statues were carved from soft tuff, and although the tuff was a light material, the statues were enormous and heavy. But this was no problem for Tamim. As a child, he had learned the secrets of the Egyptian masters, the art of moving massive stone blocks through levitation. Tamim knew the frequencies that made stone float in the air. He crafted a beautiful flute for himself, and to its sound the heavy statues rose into the air and floated to the platforms prepared for them. Like birds born of earth, they ascended, not by force, but by harmony, guided by a song older than memory. It was a beautiful time. Tamim knew he was doing something profoundly important for himself, for Yishun. He did not think that the statues would outlive him and his wife. He knew that nothing could outlive his love, and stranded on the island, he devoted all his strength to bringing his dream closer, reuniting with his beloved. The island became his workshop. All the knowledge he had ever acquired, he now used here. The platforms were built using polygonal masonry, a technique of fitting together precisely cut polygonal stones at irregular angles. Egyptian architects had taught Tamim this method, though they themselves used it rarely, preferring walls made of massive, perfectly fitted rectangular blocks. But in Tamim's circumstances, polygonal masonry seemed the best choice for the platform foundations. And so he labored day and night with the islanders, setting the platforms around the island's perimeter so that no matter from which direction a ship approached, Yishun would see his signal. But the most important thing, the crowning touch, were the red stone hats for the statues. Of course, Tamim would have been happy to carve them from marble to make elegant replicas of his own headdress. But he had to work with the island's conditions and resources. The locals called these stone hats pukao. They were red cylindrical stones, symbolizing the headwear placed on the statues during their creation. The pukao were made from red scoria, not tuff, and differed in color from the statues themselves. They were red, just like Tamim's headdress on the day of their first meeting with Yishun. Slight poetic lift. Like drops of sunset carved in stone, they blazed atop the figures, silent beacons glowing with memory. The work surged forward. Time passed, but Yishun did not appear. Tamim never lost hope. He never lost hope. He knew the fire in her heart had not gone out, and that she was waiting for the chance to find him. But life kept slipping away. Tamim lived in a small house he had built himself near the oval crater where a freshwater lake lay, its shores thick with totora reeds. This lake was the islanders' source of fresh water, and for Tamim it was a source of inspiration. On long, lonely evenings, sitting by the lake's edge, he listened to the whisper of the wind. And it seemed to him that he could hear Yishun's voice calling his name. He wrote poetry, and later he read these poems aloud to his closest listeners, the island people. He wrote for his Yishun. "You went down into the depths, into the sea, my beloved. My princess, you vanished into the sea, my dearest. My beloved, the abyss took you. My beloved princess, we were caught by the storm far from shore, the waves swept me away, and the abyss took you." Logic told him this, but his soul said, "She is alive." It was as if the two truths fought within him. But hope was sustained by faith, because on long, cold nights, Tamim listened to the wind, and it seemed to him he could hear the voice of his beloved singing to him. "As evening falls, I remember the one I loved. Though he is now far from me, here I hear his distant voice. From beyond a distant mountain peak, echo carries it from valley to valley. The wind brings the voice of my beloved. I know you are alive, and I live in hope. So that his memory would not fade, Tamim began to write down everything he remembered, everything precious to him in life. All he knew of the sky, the stars, astronomy, architecture. He recorded everything he remembered about Yishun, her beautiful oval face, her delicate porcelain-like skin, her eyes like two oceans. He inscribed it all on tablets. It was a magnificent art he created, striving to reflect in these writings the beauty of culture. In the Arabic tradition, calligraphy was one of the highest ways to express the beauty of the world, and in its elegance there was the ecstasy of the poet. But Tamim did not want his thoughts to be accessible to all. He wanted the beauty to lie in the exquisite elegance of the lines, his own invention, but the meaning of the script had to remain hidden from everyone except himself and his beloved Yishun. Time passed, but Yishun still did not come. Yet Tamim never lost all hope. He believed she would find him someday. He simply didn't know if he would have the strength to wait. And then, in a moment of endless longing, he carved two figures, one of her and one of himself. The statue depicting Yishun, who had vanished into the ocean's depths, was hidden at the bottom of the lake. It was hidden because Tamim never wanted her image to be exposed to everyone else. The other statue was erected on the side of the hill. That statue depicted Tamim himself, a bearded man on his knees gazing upward. It was Tamim speaking to the heavens, pleading with the sky to bring his wife to him while he still had strength in his body. At night, Tamim often came to the platforms with the statues, sat beside them for long hours, lit a fire so he would not freeze, and by its light he read his poems, praying to God that his words might reach his beloved. And then, one day, he heard footsteps. A strange gait, unlike any footsteps of the islanders. The steps were cautious, light. Tamim raised his eyes and saw a figure of a young man. For a moment he thought it was his own reflection, his younger self, sent to him by memory. He closed his eyes, wishing to savor this vision sent by his own mind. But the figure drew closer, and he heard a word spoken in the language of his childhood, his native tongue. Father. Then he opened his eyes. It was not a dream, not a vision. His son stood before him, his son who had found him, and behind him stood her, Yishun, his love, who had never stopped searching for her husband. The three stood together, alone, free and weeping, and their tears of joy merged into one boundless ocean of happiness. It was their fate, to be together. They had paid the price for their freedom. They had broken the trust of Yishun's father, and there had been a debt to settle, a heavy price to pay. But they had endured it all. And now karma had stepped away, dissolved and dismantled by the eternal and unstoppable power of their love. The three of them, finally united, left the island under the cover of night. But the statues remained, enduring symbols of eternal love, a testament to the beauty of trust in your destiny and the belief that nothing in this world can stop you from achieving your dreams. And for more than 1,000 years, people continued to point to the island wondering, what is the story behind these statues? Why are they here? And each person, in their own way, finds in their presence their own inner voice, the source of power to dream and to dare.
And that's a wrap for today. We hope this journey into one of history's most enduring mysteries was both moving and inspiring. The tale of love, exile, art, and the unbreakable human spirit behind the Moai of Easter Island. If you were captivated by this story, be sure to check out more of our videos. We've got plenty more forgotten legends, ancient secrets, and hidden histories waiting for you. Got a mystery you're dying to explore? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to dive into it in a future episode and bring your curiosity to life. Till then, stay curious, stay enchanted, and never stop believing that the greatest wonders of history are always found in our hearts.